the Russians interfered with our election. And they want Trump to say they did, and he keeps saying they did. But they did. And the issue isn't Trump says it. The issue is they did, and Obama did nothing about it. And neither did John Brennan, the head of the CIA. Who is John Brennan? John Brennan's been making a lot of noise. He's probably the most contemptible of the Trump critics coming out of the Obama administration. A former CIA director. Isn't that weird? Now, I want to play a few clips. I want you to stick with me, because I believe this is a very, very important hour, of John Brennan, going back many, many, many months, really from the beginning, and just relentlessly attacking Donald Trump, the former CIA director, under whose authority it was to fight the Russians interfering with our election. There's been more reporting day in, day out, day in, day out. Trump won't say it. Trump won't say it. Of course, there's a montage out there that shows he says it over and over and over again. But put that aside. What the hell did they do about it in the prior administration? Nothing, nothing. I see nothing. And that would include Brennan, the director of the CIA. Please, I'm going to walk through this step by step. I can't get everything said and done in 45 seconds. Some people can. I can't. We take our time and we walk through things. Here's John Brennan on MSNBC today. Cut one, go.
But soon after his election, he started to denigrate the intelligence and law enforcement profession, as well as professionals, as well as their work. And then over the past year and a half, I think he has demonstrated time and time again that he lies to the American people and that he is not fulfilling the responsibilities of the office of the presidency in terms of keeping this country strong and safe.
Tuesday, MSNBC, John Brennan. Cut two, go.
Well, good on Dan Coates to stand up for the women and men of the intelligence community. And those who are going to be silent in this administration are complicit. And so they need to be able to speak out very strongly. But what Mr. Trump did yesterday was to betray the women and men of the FBI, the CIA, NSA, and others, and to betray the American public. And that's why I use the term that this is nothing short of treasonous, because it is a betrayal of the nation. He is giving aid and comfort to the enemy, and it needs to stop. And Mr. Trump needs to understand that there are going to be consequences for him, too. And I do hope that those who voted for Mr. Trump, in good conscience, are going to see that he is leading us down a very dangerous path.
Wow. Now, June 28th, John Brennan on MSNBC. Cut three, go.
You've called him a danger to national security. In your view, is this president a danger to democracy?
Well, I think he is in terms of some of the things that he has done and said.
These are strong words.
Well, they are strong words, but I think you look at Mr. Trump and what he does in these various rallies, he is increasing divisiveness in this country. He is one of the principal reasons why we have such a polarized electorate out there and populists.
Interesting. Cut four, go.
And for the president at this point to say it's unconstitutional, I think it just shows how worried he is, how fearful he is about what the special counsel is uncovering. And his tweets are not the tweets of an innocent individual. So I think it really demonstrates just how desperate he is getting, grasping at straws, and Rudy Giuliani as well. And neither Rudy nor his boss feel encumbered by facts, truth, or common sense. And so I think that's why they're throwing these things out now, to try to get whatever traction among their base as possible.
That was June 4th, 6 weeks ago. John Brennan on MSNBC, June 1st. Cut five, go.
We are very, very concerned that what we're seeing here is something that we have seen in other countries around the globe, which really led to the degradation of democratic principles, as well as the standards of governance. That should not be happening here. This is the United States of America. No. Donald Trump has not lived up to those minimum standards.
More. Pretty shocking, isn't it? John Brennan, May 10th, 2018. Cut six, go.
This is a very large and painful national kidney stone. The relief we feel afterward is going to be just exhilarating.
John Brennan, March 21, 2018, MSNBC. Cut seven, go.
He is mean-spirited. He is dishonest. He has shown a lack of integrity, and he has continued to, I think, demean the office of the presidency. And so I've decided to put my silence aside and to speak up and speak out because I do think our future is in jeopardy while Mr. Trump continues his antics.
Who is this man, John Brennan? Have you ever heard a former CIA director talk like this? As often as this? What is he doing? Why is he doing it? There's a piece in the American Spectator back in March by our friend Professor Paul Kengor, who I had on here the other day. Let's start putting the pieces together about John Brennan. The question has been asked, and this is me, not Kengor, about the President of the United States, if the Russians have something on him. Should the question not be asked if Mr. Brennan is operating on behalf of the Russians? Well, that's just as plausible, isn't it? That is, do the Russians have something on Mr. Brennan? Is he the Manchurian former CIA director? Just pretend I'm a host at MSNBC. But let me read this to you from Professor Kengor. Obama CIA Director John Brennan recently uncorked an epic Twitter rant, enraged by President Trump's words aimed at FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who, by the way, is now under criminal investigation. Brennan steamed at the president, quote, when the full extent of your venality, moral turpitude, and political corruption becomes known, you will take your rightful place as a disgraced demagogue in the dustbin of history. You may scapegoat Andy McCabe, but you will not destroy America. America will triumph over you. Now, more than one faithful reader of this fine publication, the American Spectator, emailed Professor Kengor about the irony of such words coming from a man who wanted Gus Hall, the longtime boss of the Communist Party USA, to be president of the United States. For those too young to remember, Gus Hall was the longtime hack and head of Communist Party USA, or CPUSA, beginning in 1959 until his death in 2000. Not even Joe Stalin, as a party general secretary, came close to matching Gus Hall's interminable tenure. Gus Hall was unwaveringly dedicated to a global communist revolution and a truly evil empire that was ultimately and blessedly consigned to the dustbin of history. Brennan's loaded words echoed a phrase that Bolshevism made infamous. From the delightful Leon Trotsky to the charming Yuri Andropov, the exhortation evidently remains etched in John Brennan's comradely memory. Go the place where you belong from now on, Trotsky thundered at the Mensheviks in 1917, the dustbin of history. So you see, the former CIA director John Brennan channeled Trotsky in the service of attacking Trump. Of course, that's precisely the point. The same Mr. John Brennan had supported Mr. Gus Hall for President of the United States back in the Brezhnev era. Brennan literally cast a vote for the Kremlin's man in Washington. Needless to say, the Kremlin in those days was a rather bad place that housed some nasty guys. Leonid Brezhnev's KGB chief was Yuri Andropov. About the time that Brennan was registering a ballot for Moscow's man in America, Gus Hall, to become America's next president, Brezhnev and Andropov were giving the green light to one of the most shocking crimes of the deadly 20th century, the assassination of Pope John Paul II. It was Andropov who gave the go-ahead to the Soviet GRU to hire Muslim Turk Mehmet Ali Agach to murder the head of the world's largest Christian church and inheritor of the chair of St. Peter. That thought to have raised a red flag to John Brennan, who, among other things, had been raised an Irish Catholic. His lurch to the far left occurred during his college years at the Jesuit-run Fordham University in New York. In fact, if one studies Brennan's admission that he voted for Gus Hall, it looks like he also suggested that he might have actually been a member of the Communist Party in 1980. Yes, a formal member. Are we allowed to say that? I don't know this to be true, Mr. Brennan. Again, I want Mr. Producer to ask Mr. Brennan to invite him onto the program. Would you do that? All right, let's do it again. Once upon a time in pre-Obama America, the possibility of a Communist Party USA membership would have been disqualifying, a disqualifying factor to run the CIA. But not to the president that Americans elected in 2008 and re-elected in 2012. To the contrary, Obama would have been highly sympathetic. It was likewise in 1980 at Occidental College, according to classmate John Drew, that the young Obama was an ideological Marxist, albeit not a formal CPUSA member. Only the most hardcore joined the party, including Obama's mentor, Frank Marshall Davis, whose underground code name for the party was the Church. But alas, that's just the start of the irony in John Brennan's tweet about the corruption of Donald Trump. Observe that Brennan also blasted Trump for demagoguery, venality, moral turpitude, Well, that took some gall for a Gus guy. Gus Hall was all those things and worse. I couldn't begin to hear lay out the full spectrum and spectacle and disgrace, to borrow another Brennan description, that was Gus Hall. But here's one particularly relevant item of interest. Old Gus was so corrupt that even the Russians couldn't trust him. An eyewitness to that reality was Morris Childs, a remarkable individual whose story was told by the late John Barron in his fascinating book, Operation Solo, the FBI's Man in the Kremlin. Childs was Gus's number 2 at the Communist Party USA, and all along, Childs was secretly working for the FBI. See, back then, informants were spying on the communists. Today, of course, they spy on the Trump campaign. The courageous Childs marvelously hoodwinked Hall and his Moscow cronies. The Soviets loved Childs like a brother, bestowing on him their celebrated Soviet Order of the Red Banner, a hilarious accomplishment for an undercover FBI agent. What Childs learned from the Soviets was significant. But as to the point of Gus Hall's corruption, consider this. The Soviet Union was secretly bankrolling the Communist Party USA, including annual subsidies to the Daily Worker, their newspaper. It was illegal for CPUSA and Gus Hall to receive this money. Our government knew this was happening, but it kept the information quiet to protect Childs so he could continue providing crucial inside intelligence. Mark, what's this have to do with Gus Hall? I'm not done. Mark, what's this have to do with John Brennan? I'm not done. Morris Childs and his brother Jack, also working for our side, were conduits for the funding. The Kremlin gave CPUSA tens of millions of dollars. The total rose to $2.775 million by 1980. Now, the FBI knew the precise amount because it counted every dime at a halfway house prior to when Morris deposited in a safe for Gus Hall. To repeat, Hall and the Communist Party USA were doing all of this illegally. They were a directly subsidized arm of America's chief adversary, of a barbaric regime. That's not the end of it. Of that is Gus Hall's corruption. As for the safe in which Moscow's money was placed for the Communist Party, Gus always pocketed a portion for his personal stash. Childs knew this, and the FBI knew it. He wasn't trustworthy. Then again, why would anyone trust a communist general secretary? Come to think of it, why would anyone vote for a communist general secretary to be their president of the United States? Which brings us back to John Brennan. One might lend more credibility to Brennan's crowing about Donald Trump if he had better judgment about presidents of the United States. There's lots of details about Gus Hall, but too many for a short article like this. But here's one more. On vacationing in North Korea, Hall said, "The world should see what North Korea has done. In some ways, it's a miracle. If you want to take a nice vacation, take it in North Korea." On the party's position on the Hitler-Stalin of 1939 pact, Stalin's purge trials, and the 1956 invasion of Hungary, he said, "I never believed that we should dwell too much on the past. I've been much more interested in the future." Whataboutism? Whataboutism? On socialism's inevitability in America, he said, "There's no question that the United States will become a socialist country. It's an inevitability as the sun rising tomorrow." Well, John Brennan took part in these elections. He cast a vote for the cause. John Brennan. But luckily, Ronald Reagan won, 1980 and 84, because the rest of us got the vote too. John Brennan votes for Gus Hall, weasels his way into the CIA, is worried about a lie detector test that might reveal that he voted for Gus Hall, so he confesses to it. Still hired, works his way up through the civil service, becomes known to Barack Obama, who appoints him the head of the CIA. If we're to ask over and over and over again if the Russians have anything on Donald Trump, is it not fair to ask if John Brennan, he's working for them, or was he working for us? I'm not making an accusation. I'm just pretending to be an MSNBC host. John Brennan likes to make allegations left and right, but he, more than anyone else, consistently, routinely, almost daily, makes the most outrageous and vicious attacks on the president that are intended to force him from office, intended to diminish his popularity, intended to cripple him. John Brennan, in my view, must be the most popular person in the Kremlin. John Brennan, in my view, must be the guy the Kremlin appreciates the most. He was chosen by Obama for reasons we still don't know to be director of the Central Intelligence Agency. You know, maybe I'm too old, but I remember when if you had any associations with anybody in the Communist Party USA, let alone admitted voting for them, you couldn't work at the CIA. You couldn't work at the FBI. But apparently now that's very cool. The Russians...